Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
We got to talk to Kerry Coombs, so everything's going great, and it's a little more intense than it was when I got up this morning.
You know, I wanted to ask, because we talked to the bulk of the Ohio State assistants on Wednesday morning, beginning at 9:30, and fortunately, my name wasn't on the list high enough to get to be able to talk to Kerry Coombs. But I wanted to be like, I wanted to say, "Hey, Coach, thank you for getting up early for us to see what his reaction would have been at like, oh, really? 9:45? That's early." And well, it's early for me now. It's Tom. I know you got kids, so you're up early no matter what. But I'm struggling at getting up. I set the alarm for like 7:45 every day, and I can't get up until like 9 to where I'm like really fully doing something. It's been rough. And am I staying up late? Sure, but not any super later than I would before. It's just I don't have to be somewhere, so I'm not gonna be there.
Don't think of it as being lazy. Just think of it as operating on like the mountain time zone. Like it's fine. That's just I'm just keeping my body clock on mountain time right now. Why? Because reasons. That's why.
That's all. Yeah, exactly. All I need is reasons. I don't need good ones. Just reasons. I'll tell my wife that. Hey, I'm on mountain time. All right, and if you keep at it, I'm going straight to Pacific. That's it. I'll go back to my the high school summer days, or as a kid in summer, where if you got up before noon, you felt like you were, what are you trying to do?
Why are you up so early?
Who are you trying to impress? But no, I would not be allowed to sleep till noon. I would get in trouble for that today. I don't even want to think about the consequences of the shame and the look of just disgust if I like walk downstairs and it's noon, and then you get the sarcastic "Good morning." Yeah, whatever. Oh, look who's up, sunshine. Blah blah. But whatever.
What are you talking about? It's still 10 a.m. Oh, that's right. You're on Eastern time. I always mess these time zones up. I'm sorry.
That's right. So yeah, we did get to talk to. Let's see, Kerry Coombs, Larry Johnson, Tony Alford, Brian Hartline, Greg Stadrawa, Kevin Wilson, and Tom.
Did you say
Al Washington? There you
yes.
go. In that order, and like I said in the last show, we'll eventually get through everybody. Today we're going to be talking about what Kerry Coombs and Larry Johnson had to say. And Tom, as everybody might suspect, Kerry Coombs said he's climbing the walls at home. He is a little bit stir crazy at this point. He said he's so desperate for competition, he went out and bought a ping pong table so that him and his wife could play. And I have to imagine that if this is the only competition going on in that house, and you know how he is, how fired up he is, I would think by one day of ping pong, his wife is probably like when he's on a Zoom call with a recruit or something, she's going to pick that ping pong table up by herself and take it out to the curb, out with the garbage, and be like, this doesn't live here anymore. Because yes, it was good for you to get some competition in, but I cannot play ping pong 14 hours a day.
Yeah, play ping pong 14 hours a day, and I can't imagine he's like real quiet about it when he plays either. Like I would imagine it's not just like, oh, we're gonna go play ping pong for a while. It's got to be like, no, we're gonna play ping pong, and it's gonna be awesome, and it's gonna be so intense, and it's gonna be incredible, and yes, and I mean, I would imagine that after they've been married a good while, so yep. I would imagine she is used to it, and finds it as endearing as we do. I would certainly think so. Yeah, he is the most consistently on brand person you could possibly imagine. And I remember when he first started, it was like, okay, so what's this guy's deal? The first time he started, not now. But when he first started, when did he show up? It was 2000. Was he on Urban's initial staff? Because he replaced Bill Sheridan, right?
Right. He came in February or March of 2012.
2012, yeah. And it was like, okay, what's this guy's deal? Is this just like a gimmick? It's like, oh no, this is a real live actual insane person who is super intense and really is like this. And it's kind of awesome. It's a little bit like PJ Fleck, where it's like, is this just a gimmick? It's like, oh no, this is actually how this guy is. So yeah. And you will find people who will ride or die for PJ Fleck, and good luck finding someone around the Ohio State program who does not love Kerry Coombs in every possible way.
Well, you're right. You will find people who don't like Fleck even after meeting him and knowing him. But I've never heard anybody like that with Kerry Coombs. Like, to know him is to love him, basically. And there are I've never heard any bad words, and he's still in contact with all of his former corners who are in the NFL now. He called them his sons, and coaches swear by him. Mike Vrabel, after just working with him for a little bit, was bound and determined to get him to Tennessee. And I think you come to respect that. And as Kerry Coombs said when he talked about recruiting on Wednesday, how do you pitch the NFL? And he's like, well, basically, I don't want to be around anybody that isn't striving for greatness. And so, yeah, you're going to recruit guys who are like that. And it's not just because they're the most talented, but it's because they have the right demeanor and right determination. When they look at Jeff Okudah, they're not looking at just the number one corner in the nation. They're looking at him as a person and what makes him that way. And so that is also Kerry Coombs. I'm not saying he's the best corner in the nation, but he's got that same demeanor and that drive. So a lot of the times when you're looking, maybe the reason it's easier for him to see that in players is because there's some mirroring aspect of it when he looks at guys, when he looks at the coaches he's working with. When, Tom, you heard him on Wednesday talking about Ryan Day and how unique of a leader he is. So he's very much in his element right now when he's talking about his desire to be surrounded by people who want greatness. He's got that at Ohio State. And I guess if you know him long enough, and I don't even know how long that takes, probably not long, you realize that there is nothing, it's not fake. It's not a persona. This is him. This is who he is. And he's never not been that when we've talked to him.
Right. Yeah. He has always, like I said, he is the most consistent person just in terms of being on brand at all times. It's really, really remarkable. And you can't, at some point, 8 years in, like if that was not who he really was, you would have seen a crack in the facade. It's like, no, this is actually who this person is. And yeah, I mean, he is, you talked about just the wanting to be around people, not selling the NFL, but wanting to be around people who want to be the best and want to, and in the coaching profession, that means being in the NFL. That's what, ultimately as a football player, you want to be in the NFL after you go through college. And, Coombs is not someone who was a superstar in college himself as a player. He went to, didn't he go to Dayton? I think, yeah, Dayton. And, so he was not some superstar. He was an assistant high school coach for a bunch of years in the late 80s, and then a head high school coach in the early 90s to 2006. And then at University of Cincinnati for a few years, and then Ohio State, and then went to the NFL. And now is back in college as a defensive coordinator. I mean, he is someone who sometimes there are guys who it probably has come easy to. I don't get the sense that anything has necessarily come easy to Kerry Coombs, but he has gotten himself to the NFL. He's turned himself into a defensive coordinator. He's one of the most, the highest ranked, most revered recruiters in all of college football. I mean, if things don't necessarily come super easy to you and you really have to work for them, then I think you appreciate that more in other people. And that's that's something that I think has led to him probably seeking out players who are going to develop well. Because if you're seeking out guys who are talented, but also going to work hard and really, really have the never quit mentality and just keep working and keep working and keep working, that's when you see guys develop, and then you're churning out first round draft picks, whether it's guys he recruited or guys he's developed or both. The defensive backfield at Ohio State over the last decade has been one of the most prolific in the country, and a lot of that I think falls back on Kerry Coombs and who he's bringing in.
Somebody asked an interesting question about, you're in the NFL and you get to keep players for 6, 8, 10 years or whatever, but here once you're in college, you get to keep them for such a shorter length of time. Sometimes it only feels like 1 year with like Marshawn Lattimore and Malik Hooker, even though they were both there for 3. But you grow, you see that growth. You've got them just where they are, as they're almost like the perfect college football player, and then they go off, and then you lose them. And so he was asked about that, and he's like, well, yeah, you wish you could keep them forever. But that's part of losing players is part of college football. And he said that's part of the job. And you get to watch all of these players grow. You get to watch Jeff Okudah and Damon Arnette, and he talked about all of going back to Bradley Roby. But the good thing is that you also get excited about that next group, and that's one of the things he said. It's he's excited for Arnette and he's excited for Okudah to see what they do in the NFL draft, but he's also excited about getting the next group there and getting the next group to their highest level. And he had plenty of good things to say about his group today. And honestly, Tom, this was the first time we've really heard somebody get excited about Tyreke Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about how he sees him on the outside. He had a really good winter, really good spring. It was going to be a good spring, and then everything gets cut short. But that was the most promising expression of any type of words we've had about Tyreke Johnson probably since signing day when he was a 5-star recruit.
Yeah, that was the thing that was like exclamation points in my head when he started talking about Tyreke Johnson, because they have Shaun Wade this year. You have a pretty good sense between like Cam Brown and Sevyn Banks, and there are guys there that will be probably at least pretty good corners, that they'll end up with a couple pretty good corners. Tyreke Johnson was kind of the big question mark. I'm pretty sure I wrote about him as like the guy who had the most to prove this spring, or the most on the line this spring. And he's, it was very much like this was kind of going to be a put up or shut up spring for him, where, if this is going to happen, if you are going to live up to the 5-star billing you came in with, this was the time when we were going to start to see it. And obviously we did not get a chance to see it, and that was no fault of his. But if Coombs is as legitimately excited about what Tyreke Johnson can do now and how he looks right now as he presented during that phone call, that's a real good sign, because they need someone to play outside on the other side opposite Wade. They need someone to be the slot corner. They need you want someone in there to be someone else in the rotation, if you can have someone else in the rotation. Those are all important pieces that they were among the biggest questions facing this team this spring. And if Tyreke Johnson can answer the Tyreke Johnson question with, exclamation points, as it sounds like maybe he was on his way to starting to do, then that doesn't just answer his question. That answers one of the biggest questions that was facing this team this year.
Because me personally, I have kind of, I don't want to say dismissed him, but he's in the back of the line for me when I think of who's going to be playing at corner. It's Shaun Wade, it's Cameron Brown, it's Sevyn Banks. Is it Marcus Williamson helping out in the slot? And then for me, I've been wait and see on Tyreke Johnson, and I still will. But it was just good to hear some positive words. And Combs also talked about how smart he was. And so when you have that kind of player, the athleticism is there. But then if he can also continue to, get into playbook and and learn the schemes. Not learn it, he knows it, but just continue to get better where he can, then that's promising for this season. Coombs was also asked about Seven Banks and the progress, because he was the guy who signed him, and Coombs said, well, he, looking back, he was exactly what they envisioned an Ohio State cornerback being when they signed him, because he's long, he's fast, he's strong, he's all of that. But then you get back here and you see how much he's grown, and that's impressive as well. Basically saying this, Seven Banks is what an Ohio State corner should look like. He competes well, and he's taking pride in what he's doing right now. And I assume Cameron Brown is in that same spot. It was interesting when he was talking about getting all of these young guys ready to go and ready for the season. And he's like, Shaun Wade could go tomorrow. Everybody else, they're trying to get ready. Shaun Wade he's ready. You can do whatever you need, you can get from him. So when overall, Kerry Coombs just sound really excited about this group. Now, let's preface that with Kerry Coombs is always excited about his players. Okay. He is always positive about his players, but he can also be critical. But just, you know how I started a show the other day saying, Tom, I'm grumpy. Don't talk to me anymore. I've been cooped up too long. I'm no longer friendly. You wonder, can coaches get like that when asked about their players? You know what? I've been in this house for 30 days. I'm just going to tell you how it is. I'm not happy about this. But he's very upbeat, and for the guys he talked about, seems pretty positive. And we didn't even get into Legend Cavazos and Ryan Watts, who are long, fast, not afraid to stick their nose in the running game. And so, you lose Jeff Okudah and Damon Arnette, and gosh darn it, that sucks for that coach. But then I'd say look around your room, but you look on your laptop screen at the Zoom call of your position meeting, and you see, no, you can't see that Ryan Watts is 6'3" from a headshot. But you look at all of those guys you've got on your screen, and I bet it eases the pain a bit.
Yeah, I'm sure he's feeling, having a Shaun Wade back to start with, that makes that automatically, that answers the number one question you were going to have. So that's a good start. But the nice thing with the younger guys with the Ryan Watts and Legend Cavazos, who only have had 3 practices so far, is they're not relying on those guys this year. They don't need either of those guys to be an immediate starter or even an immediate rotation player. If you have a Tyreke Johnson and Seven Banks and Cam Brown and Shaun Wade and potentially a Marcus Williamson, that's plenty of corners. And the younger guys, there's a lot less pressure on them to get on the field immediately. It can be, okay, take this as a year to learn and not have too much pressure on you. That's the advantage of having a Shaun Wade back. Means there's one less spot that that's a question mark in terms of guys who are going to be in that regular rotation. What you got there. And a lot of the other guys, at least Banks and Brown, you basically know what you have there, and you can sort of project forward another year of growth on those guys, because they were both functional players last year. They were not up to the level of Jeff Okudah or Shaun Wade or Damon Arnette, but they were functional players last year. It was not like, oh no, here they come again, it's going to be a disaster. They were completely fine. And there has been you can basically look at an Ohio State corner, and there's a fairly consistent growth curve. Jeff Okudah was a little ahead of the curve because he was playing as a true freshman and was, started that Cotton Bowl when Denzel Ward sat the game out. So, if you're able to start as a true freshman, then yes, you're probably, your curve starts a little higher than other people's, but, there is a fairly consistent curve among guys who have been Ohio State corners. And I think you're going to see those guys, see those guys start that path, but they don't need to be too high on that curve this year because they have the luxury of depth. One thing, since I brought up Arnette, I loved Kerry Coombs saying, someone asked, Damon Arnette was viewed by some people as something of an underachiever at times. And Kerry Coombs was, I don't know if taken aback was the right word, but it was just kind of like, what? you got to think about the standard at Ohio State that anyone would think of Damon Arnette as an underachiever. I mean, Damon Arnette had a very, very good season. I think I just saw a stat that he only gave up like one touchdown or something last year. One of those like PFF stats.
Yeah, it was 0 touchdowns in man coverage, or in single coverage. Is the one I saw. And
okay, yeah.
And it didn't necessarily say last year. I don't know that had a single date on it, but I would assume he's given up something in his career. But
yeah, probably. But yeah, but I mean, he is, based on the standard for corners at Ohio State, it was like, yeah, I mean, he's okay. He's like the third best corner they have out there probably last year. I think that was kind of the general perception of him, but he was a heck of a player. And to Combs' point, if that's an underachiever, then that speaks pretty highly of the standard that people have for that room.
Ryan Day said it when we talked to him last week or whatever. If there's a bunch of better corners than Damon Arnette, he'd like to see them. And Combs said basically the same thing, to say that he's going to be a very, very good professional football player. His work ethic is now off the charts, and that's something Arnette would admit to as well. But the other thing Combs said, he can play inside, he can play outside. We know how tough he is. I mean, he played with a cast and brace on his wrist all season long. And then, like the last thing he said was, don't be surprised at how high he is selected. Now, I think most people expect second or third round. I've seen some projections of the first, which would be great for him, but we'll see. I'm assuming second round, and I bet he would take that, even though he will also be motivated by that, as many players are when they, however many players at their position get selected ahead of them, they remember that number and they use it to drive them. Combs also said, surprisingly, recruiting is going pretty well, and I believe the word he uses, he feels fantastic about it. Couldn't get into any of the names, obviously, but one of the things he talked about is, it goes back to who we talked about on our last show, commitment of Jansen Dunn, the 4-star safety out of Kentucky. He said, Combs said on Wednesday, they look for guys who are long guys who can run, tackle, and cover, but they're also searching for versatility. And when you look at Ohio State's class right now in the secondary, they've got that, because you've got Dunn. Is he a corner? Is he a safety? You've got Andre Turrentine. Is he a corner? Is he a safety? Devontae Smith is certainly a corner, but he can play inside. He can play outside. So there is that versatility in that class, and they want guys who can play multiple spots. I mean, shoot, where would they have been without Shaun Wade last year, playing multiple spots or being able to play in multiple spots? Even the year before, when they had a bad defense, I mean, he was not the reason for that bad defense. And so the more guys you have like that, you mentioned even Pete Werner and what he could do, but when they look for guys in the secondary, they're looking for the right people. But if you can do more than just one thing, that makes them even more valuable, because he said the game is more situational. It's getting more situational. And Tom, when he said that, it was exactly what reminded me of what Jeff Hafley had said when he took over last year. So you've got the NFL mentality coming in, and continuing to the Bill Belichick thing is finding what everybody does well, and then giving them an opportunity to do those things. And they're doing that just in recruiting, and then eventually that pays off because they can do it on the field.
Yep. And you mentioned Pete Werner, and I know there is, I think there are probably fewer Pete Werner haters than there were a year ago, but Kerry Coombs, not a Pete Werner hater. He said a lot of teams are going to want Werner at the next level in the NFL, and just the versatility there that he brings. I mean, we just talked about, that's what NFL teams are looking for. Pete Werner can do it because he can be a linebacker. I mean, they were running him at will this spring, but he was also he played Sam last year, which means he's lining up kind of on this tight end side of the field. But then there were times when he was the lone deep safety. I mean, that is versatility right there. If you can be the Malik Harrison type role, or the Sam Backer, think of that as the Pete Werner role if you want to, and then also be potentially the deep safety every once in a while, be the Jordan Fuller or Josh Proctor type player at the back end of the defense if they need him to be on certain snaps. He's not going to be there every snap, but just the ability that you can do that every once in a while lets you do so many different things. I mean, that goes back to what Jeff Hafley talked about with Shaun Wade last year being the Swiss Army knife, where he could just kind of do everything, and that lets you. If Shaun Wade has to play deep safety on one play, he can do that. If Shaun Wade needs to play in the slot, he can do that. If Shaun Wade needs to play outside, he can do that. And if a guy gets hurt, that's hugely valuable. Just in terms of disguising coverages and being less predictable and making opposing quarterbacks have to try and figure stuff out, that's hugely valuable. So, yeah, Pete Werner is someone who, if you have not made peace with the fact that Pete Werner is a good football player, you're going to have to just sort of defer to authority on this, because a guy who was a NFL defensive backs coach for a couple of years just told you that a whole bunch of NFL teams are going to want him. So that's a pretty good piece of validation if you weren't sold already.
Yeah, I remember tweeting something maybe this time last year before the season, saying like, my vision is that Damon Arnette will become an Ohio State favorite, this season, and I think he kind of did that, or at least he wasn't, as you said, as hated. I would say the same thing for Pete Werner in 2020, where he'll continue to make plays, and the days of being matched up against J.D. Spielman unfairly in 2018. That gets further in the distance, and you forget about that, and then you just remember the good plays. And if he's at the will this year, then you got fewer things to worry about. I think he's going to make a bunch of plays, and there's yet to be a coach say anything bad about Pete Werner. And Al Washington talking to him at the bowl game this past winter, it was up there with when Urban Meyer would talk about John Simon. Just the ridiculousness of, he's the perfect human being. He cannot tell a lie, but he did chop down a cherry tree or whatever. But I've forgiven him because he makes me want to be a better man, that sort of thing. And that's where coaches are with Pete Werner. So get used to it, appreciate it, make friends with it, and, root on Pete Werner this coming season. Another interesting thing that came out of this is Ryan Day's circle of care. Mm-hmm. And that was something that Kerry Coombs first mentioned, and then Kevin Wilson talked about it later on. But Coombs was asking, why is recruiting at the level where it's at? And he said, under Urban Meyer, recruiting was all-encompassing. But even now, his quote was, I really have never seen anything like it, and talking about what is going on today with Ohio State recruiting. He said Ryan Day has a great feel, and when the parents sit down and talk to him, it feels genuine, because I'd say it is, I dare to say it is genuine. And I've mentioned this in the past, where you see the Urban Meyer speeches, pregame speeches or whatever, and it feels, I don't know, like rehearsed, or this is the 18th time he's given this one. Like, maybe there's a more genuine feel to Ryan Day in recruiting, even though, I'm sure the sides of Urban Meyer we don't necessarily see those in recruiting, because, that's a private side. But so Day has this thing that he's called the circle of care, and the way then it was also described as, picture it being the block O, and picture the player or the recruit being in the middle of that block O. And then the O around it is everything that Ohio State provides for that player, be it, schooling, mental health, physical health, training, networking, experience, job experience, and just basically no concerns for the parents. And so it's a really, it encompasses, like the Real Life Wednesday was implemented by Urban Meyer to give a more well-rounded thing. Like, Tom, there's nothing more well-rounded than a circle, right?
That's true. My favorite part of that conversation with Kevin Wilson was he lays out all these things and he's talking about, trainers and sports science and strength and conditioning and coaches and managing hydration and concussion and testing and, mental health, balancing the stresses of college, nutrition, academics, Real Life Wednesday, the branding programs, benefits to the student athlete through the Nike contract. And he lists all these things. He's like, wow, that's so comprehensive. And then one question later, he goes, oh, I forgot. I forgot one thing, media training. And it's like, Kevin, you're talking to the media right now. Come on, man. So
he did apologize, though.
He did apologize. So, yes. So, our good friends, Jerry and Mike, obviously a very important part of the process as well. They are, it is a very, very, comprehensive approach, a really holistic approach, which is, there were a bunch of questions on Wednesday about, how much are you guys selling the NFL in recruiting? And it's like, well, I mean, that's a part of it because that's the ultimate goal for a lot of these guys. But, as much NFL success as Ohio State players have had in the last few years, the last decade, there are still, half of them are not going to be pro football players, maybe more. So you have to kind of develop all the other stuff and, have the, this is something that some schools have been doing for a long time that Ohio State, I think, has been selling for a while as well is, this is not a 4-year decision. This is a 40-year decision that even if you come to Ohio State and then you go to the NFL, you're still set up more for success long term by coming here and because of all the things that we're providing. And we're going to take good care of you. We're going to, protect you. We're going to, they're using all sorts of wearables and tracking how much activity are these guys getting, and are they have they run so much that now they might be at risk for a hamstring injury and they need to dial it back in a certain workout and that kind of stuff. There's just and then the mental health and aspect of it and academics and the Real Life Wednesday piece. You see all of these individual pieces of what they're doing to help care for and provide for the student athletes, but when you hear it all listed out, it's like, wow, that is pretty much anything you could think of. Like, I mean, if you're down to the point where you're thinking about hydration and the role of hydration in concussions, like, yeah, that's a pretty important. You're probably getting down to the nitty gritty pretty well.
Yeah, and I think maybe Tony Alford was asked about the NFL, and then he gave an answer, and then that's when Brian Hartline chimed in. He's like, "Hey, before we go, let me just say, like, Anthony Gonzalez, former Buckeye receiver, is who we're talking to today in Real Life Wednesday." That's what he, on Wednesday. And keep in mind, this is a first-round draft pick. Only played 5 years in the NFL, but is now, in politics, Senator Tom? Is what Brian Hartline called him. He's a state senator?
He is a U.S. representative. He's a congressman.
Okay, right.
Yes.
So, senator. That's what I get for listening to a college football coach. But yeah, so the NFL is one thing, but that only lasts so long. And Anthony Gonzalez he was always a little bit more cerebral than a lot of players, even in his time with the whole oxygen tent and wanting to leave early because you only have so much mileage and wanting to get that next start in your career or next step of your life. And so that was another, example of just somebody else who has been able to make the most of his time at Ohio State in his 4 years. And the NFL is a selling point, but it's so much more beyond that because, like you said, Tom, the whole 4-year decision versus a 40-year decision. And so that's what that circle of care also encompasses. And that was I'm sure Ryan Day will be asked about that the next time we talk to him, and he'll open up maybe a little bit more about that. And when he does, we will then talk about it. But as for today's show, Tom, we didn't even get to Larry Johnson. We'll do that the next time, and then continue to get to as many coaches as we can as we try to give you guys shorter shows in rapid succession, because we have been told that's what everybody likes. And so we want to give people what they want, Tom. We don't want to give them stuff that they don't want. We don't want to be the Cleveland Browns organization the way they treat their fans.
Just because we got all the interviews all at once doesn't mean we're going to make you smoke the whole pack. You can parse this, you can space this out a little bit, and it doesn't sound like the college football season is going to happen real imminently. So we'll have time to get through all of it. And if you guys told us what you want, we are more than happy to do that. And if you guys have suggestions on show topics, we're also happy to include those, weave those in. We'll probably do a listener question show at some point fairly soon. So if you have questions, hit us up on social media. He is at Tony Gerdeman. I am at Tom Orr 4 on Twitter. Hit us up there on the Ozone message board, and we are happy to do whatever you guys want us to do right now, because there is not a ton of other things going on right now. So we're happy to do whatever you guys would like us to do.
That's it. Just tell us what to do. Just tell us. Just tell us what to do. No, we'll get back to you guys with ongoing what the coach had to say, and obviously covering whatever else happens along the way. So we want to thank you all for listening. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. And just be careful out there as your states begin to possibly open up, if you're in one of those states that is getting frisky. So we'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.
the morning.